kind of that next piece of what's missing when we've tried all those things and maybe it's still not having the impact we'd hoped for. One thing we're seeing in a pretty significant number is the need for mental health support. So a lot of reasons kids are missing school is their mental health and their social emotional well-being. And so that would be an area for, we've had some partnerships in the past and that would be something that I think would be a big impact is when we talk to the families, talk to these students, and that's the indicator. And we don't always have that support here in school. And right now in the state's in a pretty big deficit of mental health professionals as well. So, if there's a way to get some interim support through the school or other systems beyond our school counselors, sometimes there's a greater need for more of a clinical support. Another thing that comes up often is, we've got a little over 1,500 students and school is still generally school. It's mostly a one size fits most system. And there are some kids that just isn't going to work for. And so there is a need for some good thinking around that and maybe some problem solving and what are some alternative options. I know that's a big thing to tackle, but it's something to be aware of. Just being a little more intentional on who is that attendance staff. If that's a specified secretary in each building, is there an IA? Of course, we work with our, community outreach advocates is an important role in here. But just making sure those staff members are dedicated to that as a part of their job, it's not their whole job. Kind of rolling through that. And of course, our decisions are based on data that has to be good. So, we use Power School and it's got some strengths, so we've found some challenges with it as well. So we want to make sure when we are making those decisions based on that attendance rate, that it's good and we can get the information we need in a timely manner so that we can be the most effective as possible. Now, there's a few others there. Of course, also when we talk about parent education, of course, we know all parents want their kids to do well, be supported and be in school. But sometimes they're not aware of just how much school their child is missing. We do learn sometimes that those numbers in Power School aren't updated and, we work through those kinds of parts and pieces as well. Anything else?
The attendance ban is one we've kind of talked about just because our kids don't really have the ability to walk to school or ride a bike to school. There's not, we don't have sidewalks and things like that, and our district's so spread out. So our ability to go pick a kid up would actually be really beneficial for some students, especially if they miss that first bus or that second bus. There's only about an hour in between. Half of our teenagers don't wake up till 10 in the afternoon, so. Yeah, but just different things, parent education piece is a big piece of it. I know we do a lot during conferences in terms of trying to educate parents on why attendance is so important and what happens if they build these habits. By the time they get into high school, then they really see the hardships because their habits are formed, they're not going to school regularly, and then all of a sudden these classes count for a diploma, whereas before that, we want the parent, we need them to learn, but they're not gonna get held back. So just trying to get them in the right mindset of why school is important. And just because a kid says, I don't want to go to school today, doesn't mean that we need to let them swim home.
Okay,
Questions from board members?
yeah, we'll just go around really quickly. Robert?
I don't really have anything to add to that.
Okay,
I'm pretty impressed with being done so far. It's pretty good.
Kelsey? Glenn?
I would just ask, so, obviously during COVID, our messaging was one thing,
Mhm.
and it is now. I'm not 180, but it's very much different. Is that transition complete? Are we still telling kids if they're kind of sick to stay home? What kind of messaging are we doing? So that parents and kids are obviously getting a consistent, clear
Mhm.
picture as to what the expectation.
Yeah, that
is.
consistency is one of the things we're building towards, but we're kind of following the guidelines of, fever being the key indicator. So if you're fever free, especially for 24 hours, then get them on back to us and ready to learn. But yeah, it's not the little sniffle, stay home. Yeah, so we are working on changing that dialogue and that messaging.
Yeah, it was a function of
Yep.
the
That
time.
was a reality.
It's not an indictment, it's just, we told parents to do one thing and now, we're.
Begging them to do something else.
Yes.
Absolutely, and they need to do something
Yep.
else, because it's really, really important that the
Yeah.
kids are here, so.
For sure.
Jenny?
Yeah, when we talk about these interventions, are they only for the students that are attending less than 90%?
Generally, because 90% and above is considered a regular attender,
So
and
even if we have a student that is considered a regular attender, but they're always skipping early dismissal,
Mhm.
like, you know, the advisory class or something like
yeah,
that.
that's,
Are we-
those get involved in some other ways. Typically, we'll look at, yeah, are you always missing third period? You know,
Mhm.
what are you avoiding in third period? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
so they get other interventions. It's just not the same consistent thing with tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3,
Yeah.
but a lot of those outcomes are often the same, you know. What you're doing to avoid one period may be the same as what some other kids doing to avoid the whole day.
Yeah, is that the same at the middle school too?
Yeah,
It's
and
like-
the way we run our reports by period instead of by day, those will eventually start to pop up, because if they're missing third period every single day, that's 5 a day, or 5 in a week. or-
Going and then.
Yes, or
After
taking,
grades.
yeah,
Yeah.
so those do pop up eventually, but we usually handle them just within our offices, not necessarily the whole team.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Merle?
I missed, you were mentioning that they drop and then.
So after
I
they
got
don't,
that part, but I missed the other, are they actually dropping out of school and then re-enrolling?
if they
explain.
don't attend for 10 straight days, we have to drop them out of our system, and they get a letter home that explains the process, and then parents have to come back and re-enroll them, which is actually really beneficial for us, because then the parent is right there and we are right there, so we can quickly pull them into our office and we can have a conversation about attendance and why it's so important.
Sure, so they are dropping and then being re-enrolled, okay. And then I missed what the reason was for the missing statistic.
It comes out tomorrow. So the state compiles that data on October 1st.
Come back tomorrow.
Will we get an update?
Yes, so I think that,
on that the same day?
yeah, so,
Okay.
I don't know, Crystal, if you had any questions before I chime in.
Nope, looking forward to see it doing some work.
Yeah, so they mentioned early on, a spreadsheet that they have, that they enter all this in, it's really a well put together spreadsheet of information, and so I think, you know, they've only really, I was kind of glancing at the calendar, you know, when you take away that first week of kind of getting everybody, it's really only been about 3 full weeks of school that we've been going, and so I think coming back with some data in a couple months to say, where are we at, what interventions are having the most effectiveness, and then I think at some point, also capturing, you know, what are some of the biggest barriers that families are reporting, you know, how many of these kids that are considered chronically absent, what is the overwhelming barrier, and pick, you know, identify what 1 to 3 of those are, and then what can we do to try to tackle those barriers. I was at the Costa Equity Summit this last week. On Friday, there was a session on chronic absenteeism, and they talked about you have to make some technical changes. And in terms of how you process that, and you see evidence of that, technical changes of having meetings prescriptively every 2 weeks, collecting the same data, doing those kind of things, having consistent messaging, but then you have to have what they called adaptive changes, which is really changing how humans behave. And that is probably the biggest question mark on this, is how do we change the habits of our students and their parents to get them to come to school? Because that, for me, is kind of the big question mark on this issue. Is to trying to change those habits. And we can't change them necessarily if we don't know what the barriers are. So it's this balance of trying to maintain great partnerships with our families, but then how do we start changing some of those behaviors? I mean, again, we told everybody one thing and now we're telling them something different. But in the meantime, was there also conditioning happening where maybe it just became easier to stay home, and parents have, you know, maybe given up the push to get kids to come to school? It's trying to wrap our heads around what do we think those things are? So yes, we will be back with some data to, you know, what we're trending towards this year, but also what's been the most effective thing and what's the biggest barrier.
Thanks for being willing to come in on this evening and give us this presentation. I know that a lot of us board members have an active eye on this. So we appreciate the work you're doing
You know,
and the
thank you for
impact
having us.
it's going to make.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to Youth Truth and. Let's see here, I'm gonna look on my iPad so that I'm not turned around this way and I'm not turned around that way, so. But you also have a packet in front of you here, so. We ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
So Youth Truth is a survey, it's a nationwide survey that many school districts participate in. And it really is, as the opening slide there talks about, it's really to listen to the experiences of our most important people, the people that we serve. And when I say we, I'm thinking like at this district level of this leadership of who do we serve? And we serve our students first and foremost, their parents and the staff that teach them. And getting their feedback is critically important. And so Youth Truth is a way to do that. It's been adopted by our WESD as kind of the one that overwhelmingly the districts in our area use. So which we'll dig into why that is advantageous for us. So really it's what is it? I've kind of just touched on it. It elevates the student voice. It seeks to get parent perception. Which I think is important because parents aren't necessarily in our classroom, but they have a perception of what happens and they have a perception and they form opinions based on what their kids tell them, based on the feedback the teachers provide them. So parent perception is really important. So it seeks to get that, and it empowers our staff to give us feedback. So our staff can give us clear feedback on the resources they have, what is working in their day, and what might they need. So next slide. So one thing, just to know how I evaluate what's effective, is I think that there's really two sorts of types of data. There's performance indicators, which would be our academic data that tells us how our kids are performing academically. And then there's the experience. So what we always want to do, like if I approach any type of work, I want to know, am I doing a good job and do I like doing it? That's performance. And do I feel confident in what I'm doing? And do I enjoy doing it? So for our kids, are they performing well and do they like coming to school? So in two big buckets, that's what, we want to have some data points around performance, which we will be talking about later in this month. About what are we really going to hang our hats on when it comes to performance. But it's also, in my mind, equally important that we know how our stakeholders feel about our school district. And that's what Youth Truth gets at. It gets at that experience. And so I kind of said that it's the gold standard for data collection. So because it gives you a lot of comparison data, which I will give you we'll just do a brief snapshot here in a second. And again, it gives you this understanding of our end users. So the people that we are serving, our students, parents, and staff, it helps get you data on what they're saying. So this slide is just simply a screenshot from a computer. So this is not here for us to necessarily dig deeply into, but, and I would say, and Desiree, you can kind of help me here if I misspeak, because you kind of helped me put some of this together. But this would be a screenshot of probably the furthest you would zoom out. So this is kind of the farthest that you would zoom out after getting data from Youth Truth. And so when you look at those percentages, if you look at engagement across from our students, families, and staff, that percentage is a percentile ranking. So when you had a little baby at home and you said they're in the 87th percentile of their weight, they're a healthy baby. They're a healthy big baby at the 87th percentile, okay? All right, so, kind of that idea that out of 100 kids, there's only probably 13 bigger than them, that kind of thing. This is saying that in engagement, our students, we are at the 87th percentile nationwide on that particular as they take a bunch of different engagement questions and come down. So this is again a way to,
It's actually great.
which is great about Youth Truth is, and I keep holding my hand out here, because you're zooming out to then zoom in. And so when we look at something like this, if we look at engagement where our students are ranking high, our families are ranking kind of low, and our staff are a little bit better, you might want to know, well, why is that? Or you could say relationships. You know, this again is at the intermediate school where you have 76%, again. It's at the 76th percentile, we're at the 84th percentile of families and 66th percentile of staff, so there's some congruence there. But if you look at the next one, at culture, where we're in the 18th percentile. For students, and then families is much higher percentile, and staff somewhere in the middle of there. So this would give you a place to go, I'm curious about culture, and I want to dig into that. And so we'll just kind of glance at a couple of these. To where you can look at where we're at nationwide percentile ranking for these different areas. And again, you see a 16th percentile for culture amongst students. So it's again, it's a data point that would be curious as to intermediate. I think it was 18%, this is 16% at middle. You know, this would be something that we would want to dig into. And then we've got high school.
Real quick, this is not us, all right?
No,
No, this is us.
This is, okay.
This is us.
Okay.
So then you've got high school. Where you can see some, you know, differences, again, culture being low and amongst students. But here's our problem. So if we go to the next slide. Our participation rates on this are not consistent. And so you can see that at our intermediate school, this is in 23-24. We have 95% of our students participating. Of course, they're the easiest ones to get to participate because you give them the survey and you say, do it, and they take it. And staff, if you hold it at a staff meeting, you can get pretty high participation rates. So you see at the intermediate and middle, pretty good, pretty decent participation rates. High school, 70% is not necessarily a bad participation rate, but 50% of staff. You know, if I'm Deanne, I'm not making a ton of decisions based on a survey that only 50% of my staff participated in. So, and then you can see the families is next to nothing. And so to look at those previous slides and start, you know, I think the one area that you might look at would be culture on those previous slides, but to look at where are we have discrepancies from students to staff to parents. There's not this data here has to change for 24-25. So we're gonna dig in a little bit to Youth Truth, and so Des, do you want to talk a little bit about some, these are kind of the areas where we have some where all students, staff and families ask the same question, so why don't you cover
You want
this
me to
next? Sure.
See, good, present. So there are 4 categories that everyone gets to answer questions on, and that's the engagement, relationship, culture, and safety. And as Dan was kind of indicating, there's a number of different questions that are asked about each of those categories. And then some of them really cross all 3 groups, the staff, the parents, and the students. And some of them are slightly phrased different so that they're obviously targeting students and asking a specific questions. And some of them are very specific to students or very specific to parents. Then we have additional questions that are just for students around academic challenge, college and career readiness, belonging and peer collaboration, obstacles that they're experiencing to learning, how civically ready they feel after their experience at school, and emotional and mental health. And some of those are just targeted at the high school or middle school, and some of them kind of span the 3rd through 12th grade. Or they're similar questions, but tweaked just slightly to be age appropriate. And then there's some questions that are for parents only. Parents are asked specifically about communication and feedback that they receive from the school and what resources they have available to them as parents. And then there's a staff only question around their professional development and how they feel supported by their administrators. So what we did, and we have a document that we can share also that has all of the questions. We will actually be posting a document for our families, so they know every question that is asked of both the families and the students on this survey. So if parents have any questions about like, what are we getting? What information are we gathering? But we wanted to pull up some questions just to give you a snapshot of what is asked. And specifically for those 4 major categories, I try to pull up questions that are kind of similar across the 3 different groups. So I'm not going to read that.
Yeah, so if you read my last email, I said I was going to quiz you on this, so I'm going to ask randomly which question on this particular one of engagement, so Kelsey, I'll pick on you, so which question on this are you most curious about?
And I'll phrase one thing, because you'll notice some of them are not actually questions. They're more like statements, and then they're asked to rank it, like it's a Likert scale, how much you agree to disagree with the question or the statement.
That is correct, so which statement or which one of these would you be most curious about to know?
I picked the staff on understanding my school's goals. Just curious if each staff member knows the school goals and how, and if they're being like reiterated on a consistent basis.
Merle, what about you?
I didn't do my homework,
A for honesty,
but are we choosing
any one of those.
any one of those there? I would say, my teacher's expectations make me want to do my best. Encouragement from them.
Jenny, what about you?
The same as Merle's, like, are students feeling like they know what the teacher's expectations are, and are they doing it in a way that makes them feel empowered to do their best or try their best? Yeah.
All right, when we go to the next one. All right, Glenn, which one on this page were you, made you most curious?
I focus on student because I was the same as with these 2 on the first one, but how many of your teachers are not just satisfied if you pass, but they care if you're really learning? That's obviously probably near and dear to me, so.
Robert?
Well, I always good with kids as well, so, but, I think, how many of your teachers believe that you can get a good grade if you try? And I think that's, I mean, I talk to all my patients all day long, I'm always talking to the kids, I love the kids. And so, and even my own son, and so I think that's kind of an important one for me.
Crystal?
I mean, I'll do 2, because I do like the student one. How many of your teachers are not just satisfied if you pass, they really care if you're learning? And then I feel comfortable approaching teachers about my child's progress. So I think those kind of go hand in hand.
All right, we'll go to culture. I go back around, Kelsey, which one on culture did you most stood out to you?
I could. Under staff, my school's policies are administered fairly and consistently.
Merle?
I like, my school creates a friendly environment. Leading to families.
All right, Jenny?
Under families, I believe in my school's mission, we know all the taglines, but do they know what the mission is? Do they understand it? And can they help provide support at home to their students when they're talking about school at the end of the day.
All right, we'll go to safety. Go back around to Glenn.
I don't really have an exact one, but I focused on staff here just because I think. That component leads to every other group there. Feeling safe in school. It's, at least to me, I think that's a really important component. You know, students are students. But if your staff is feeling unsafe or not comfortable, it will bleed out, I think, to the other groups.
And I think you could probably, I think there was one on one of these safety ones, which was pretty low. I would say that if there's a perception, it's probably coming from, you know, staff maybe communicating out there, because our parents listen to the staff a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, on safety, Robert?
Well, I have two for me, the family one, my child's learning environment is safe. That could be ideologically, it could be politically, not just, you know, kids against kids. So I think that's kind of an important one. And so again, that's the same thing as I talk to my patients and just listening to them. And then the student want to feel safe in various locations throughout the school. And what that actually means and as far as, is it a safe thing in their belief system? Or is it safe because they know that they can go to that teacher and talk to them about things that they might be going through, so. Those are ones that feel
And Crystal?
Yeah, I would say probably the student one, I feel safe in various locations throughout my school. But on the staff one as well, during school, there are clear rules for students against hurting other people.
Yeah.
Because staff and students need to feel safe at all times. And there needs to be clear guidance around that. And expectations.
All right, so for this last one, we're gonna do slightly different. We're gonna do a little whip around, so everybody's gonna choose theirs on student learning. So we're gonna start with, I'm gonna follow Crystal's lead here. We're gonna start with Robert and go all the way around here. So on student learning, Robert, which one of these stood out to you most?
Probably the work that I do for my classes makes me really think. Just because I mean, what. Doing these kids and they're trying to stay focused in the school environment. And then we're trying to great for these guys to be able to go on to either whether it's the trades or college. And so are they really thinking about just passing that? Or are they really thinking about what it means for putting in the work, you know, and then showing, so just not memorizing something to get it out there to get that grade.
Kelsey?
I put the same one, the work that I do for my classes makes me really think, just, and I thought of it on a slightly different aspect of like, are we challenging them enough versus like. You know, sometimes I feel like we try to, I mean, there's all different levels and demographics in the school, so like. Is it too easy for some and not hard enough for others, or is it too hard for all, or too easy for all, or like what, like. Are we really learning, you know, are we really thinking and getting the most of our school time?
Glenn?
Belonging. I really feel like part of my school's community, and that flows from me just thinking that. The others will happen, you make a kid feel like they wanna be here.
I like that one. I chose, most of my teachers want me to use my thinking skills, not just memorize things. I think so many times we throw facts at kids and want them to memorize things. Rather than like, okay, tell me how you're doing this, and then, you know, the teacher can be like, oh, yeah, I get it, but. Here's a different way, or here's, you know.
Crystal?
The work that I do for my classes make me really think. Because you have to have that initiative by the time you leave, because you're really gonna need to think when you're out in the world. And problem solve.
Yeah.
Merle?
I'm struggling to understand what I'm doing here, that I'm evaluating these as to the effectiveness of this question to probe my thinking about student learning, or I'm just responding personally, this is. You asked me this question,
Asking you personally, which of these would you be most curious about to know what our students, staff, or
what they would
yeah.
think, or what they would say. I would probably choose under belonging, how often do you work with other students in your class because your teachers ask or tell you to? And I come from the perspective of one who doesn't do that easily, and I need to be pushed to do that. It's rewarding when you do.
Great. Well, thank you all for playing along. And so I think that, I don't know about you, but how you felt about, looking at those, but. I mean, I think those are all really valuable questions that we should be asking our kids, our staff, our parents. On what is their experience like? I mean, you all sort of, especially on that last one, you all sort of gravitated towards the work that I do for my classes makes me really think. And I think that as adults, when we read that, we probably all thought of a teacher that pushed us harder than maybe we were capable of. And maybe wasn't just about memorizing things to get the easy A, but that person that really pushed us and maybe was the person that prepared us for whatever we're doing now in our adult life. And so I think that I hope we can all agree that this survey is worth investing our time in, because it's something we've already paid for. It's something that we've done for 3 years. But if you go back to if we went back to the slide that had the disparate graphs on it, we don't have consistent participation. And so my push this coming month is participation in Youth Truth. It opens on October 28th. And so I'm already scheduled to be in 4 buildings to promote the use, the students and staff probably won't have a whole lot of choice. But we'll make it fun nonetheless. So I will be at the high school next Tuesday. I will be at the primary next Thursday. And the following week, I will be at the middle school and the intermediate school with their staffs promoting this. Probably using pretty much the same presentation that I've used here tonight to really promote its use. And then I will also be making a video to send out to parents, both in English and in Spanish, to encourage parent participation. And so I'm gonna try to get that out as soon as I can, and then followed up with principal encouraging parent participation, staff encouraging parent participation, school board members encouraging parent participation. Because they'll listen to me this much, they'll listen to the principals this much, they'll listen to the teachers this much, they will listen to their peers this much. So if somebody says this is an important survey to take, they will listen to you all more than they will listen to me. So Robert, you have a question?
Yeah, it's like on that, I'm just last one, the student learning, that statement, the work that I do for my classes, it makes me really think. How is that posed to the kids? Is it posed just like this?
Yep.
So, okay, so do they know that, and are they gonna answer that, or are they gonna?
They'll rate it.
Okay,
So
just rate it.
5, I strongly agree, 4, I agree. So it's all that kind of,
Is
it's called a
there-
life.
Is there ever an opportunity for them just to maybe add to that, right, on there?
Yes.
Yes.
Cause that would be really,
Yes.
There
we
are
get
some
comments.
there's some open-ended things on here that have some amazing quotes from kids that and from staff that you can, from parents. I mean, there's open-ended and there are some real good nuggets in there.
and is there any incentive for the kids to participate this time?
Well, that's a really good, I'm not now looking at my principles.
Every
like,
kid's
yeah,
incentive.
I don't know what we could do.
I know at the middle school, they told them just do it. like,
Dutch
Yeah,
Pro
they-
card.
doing it.
It was 1992, and we're doing it in a different sequence this time, but I think in school, it's just capturing that time and having teachers with fidelity to have it up to students. Students can deny it, or not deny it.
And
decide
parents
not
can,
opt out.
yeah.
Parents can opt out, but students can be like, I don't wanna do it, but most of the time,
I firmly believe that if you can, if you get staff rallied around it, both parents and students will do that.
Dude, what
And
if,
I'm
what if
really
I,
worried, I'm
what if I
really worried
sponsor
that
a
Liz
pizza
is right.
party for whoever, high school or middle school or primary? Whoever does the most, I'll sponsor
For
a
the
pizza
whole
party.
school?
Yeah,
What would you do?
I'll-
I'm in.
yeah, I'll sponsor a pizza party for whoever.
Robert and I are just alike, because back when they.
this is being recorded.
I got it.
Well, that's good,
I
because
got
I was about to say, when there was a thing called the TEL survey. I don't know, Glenn or Crystal, if you remember the thing
Yeah.
called the TEL survey. So that was around from around 2013 to 2017. And so when I was a principal and in 2017, I said, if our staff gets 100% before those other two middle schools, I'm buying pizza. It works. It really does work.
I'm in, I'll do it.
All
You guys decide you wanna do it, I'll do it.
All right, we'll figure this out. I love a good competition.
I will add this too, I think one of the incentives, and this is the same for parents and it's the same for staff, is when kids see us use it. And use the data and reflect on it and say,
Yeah.
you guys said X. We're gonna do this because of it.
Yeah.
Then there's the incentive, like I let my voice be heard and it's kind of like, anything as. It's a civic responsibility. I wanna make my school better and I'm gonna do that by sharing my thoughts but. It won't be incentivized if we never talk about your thoughts again. We have to do something with the data and I think Dan has a clear plan for like, how do we actualize this and say, you're our end user, what you thought was important, we will make changes based on what you thought. And when they see that, then they have a greater incentive to take it.
So you see that here's the short-term use for Youth Truth is to go back to staff in January. So we get these results right before winter break. So I think it's like December 17th, we get the results back. So which will be give me great stuff to do over winter break. So and then so share the results with staff in January, share the results with you in January. And then start doing some parenting listening sessions, because one of the things, there's always two kinds of data. There's qualitative data and there's quantitative data and qualitative. So Youth Truth gives us both, but it gives us really good quantitative data. It gives us numbers. And then you have to back it up with qualitative data, which is tell me your story. And so with the parent listening session is, looking at what the parents told us. And what ones do we really want to dig into, and then have parent listening sessions, which I think all of this is really, which the next bullet is about, is this strategic plan development. How do we fold this into our strategic plan? We've got to have so much data here to work with. We should be able to really have a good foundation by which to build a strategic plan from. And I think those parent listening sessions would be a great way to do that. We'll do some principal action planning here, which is really looking at what the staff data tells us. So having our principals, I've got kind of some ideas in my head about how to do that. And then report back out to parents, because probably a bullet I could have added in there, really picking up on what Des was referring to is, so for instance, let's say parent feedback is communication isn't great. Let's just pick that one as one. And so if we dug into through listening sessions to go, what are 3 things that we could do better in the ways of communication? And so then we implement those, and then we give, wouldn't be the Youth Truth survey per se, but the same exact questions around communication, and go send a follow-up survey out saying, since your feedback, we've done X, Y, and Z. How much better on communication are we doing? And then give that survey. So in the world of special education, we call that progress monitoring, or is it ELD?
No, that's progress monitoring for its bed.
And so we monitor our progress periodically. So like 2 to 3 times a year before we do Youth Truth again. So, and that's where that principal action planning piece comes in, is what do their staffs tell them? What things can they implement? And then how do we come back again with staff to say, are we better in these areas? And same thing with kids. So let's say, you know. Let's say the kids tell us that bullying is horrible. So how do we dig into what, because that means a lot of things to kids, when they say bullying is a big problem. So what does that mean so that we can show kids that we're being more responsive? So, and then coming back, so kids, you told us that bullying is a problem here. We've done this, this, and this. Are we better at responding to bullying than we were before? And so then, you know, we'll come back around to next fall, we'll, you know, kind of, I'm gonna get this wrong, but wash, rinse and repeat, you know, we'll do this again. And so, and then you see some long-term use. I put tentative because I just want to give myself some flexibility and maybe an out here or there, but we would use this to set district goals. We'll do the youth truth survey again. We'll analyze where we grew, and maybe some other deficiencies from the parents' results, the the principal action planning, and then getting our teachers involved in more involved in this. And I'm not saying teachers won't be involved in this first go around, but I think leaders go first. And so I want to go first and I want to model, here's how we did this with parents. I want our principals to model, here's how we did this with staff, and then have our teachers get involved to say, this is how you do this with students. So I think to try to build something that can be replicated, and let the leaders go first on how do we take this data and utilize it? So.
And I'll add one additional piece, with the data, we'll have opportunities, the Youth Truth gets deep with data. So we can do comparisons to other districts that are part of the WESD, so districts that are in our surrounding area. We can compare ourselves to other rural schools. How are we doing? We can compare ourselves to national trends. We can compare ourselves to other middle schools within this demographic, right? We can compare, how did boys answer this compared to girls? How did people who identify as Latinx compared to our Black families, for example? So we can do a lot of different analysis to see if we have discrepancies or places we can specifically target with that data as well.
Linda, can you go back to the intermediates, the slide that said intermediate? There you go. So what Des is talking about is, so if we say 80, if we're in the 87th percentile for the students report 87%, I'm gonna really get this wrong, but engagement. We can go in there and we can look, how does that compare to all the schools in the WSD? How does that compare to all schools that are rural? So we can go and do a lot of comparisons on any one of those points to say, how do we compare to people that are like us?
Yeah. And then each of the questions that are in each of those categories, we get specific data on that question. So not just big summaries of engagement, but in each individual question. And then we can dig into each of those questions and look at demographics within those questions and how they answered it. And so it gives us a ton of information.
So is there historical data on the correlation between high functioning districts who are turning out, you know what I mean, a high percentage of, you know, very well educated students? And I mean, is there enough data yet in the system to?
I don't know if I could answer that specifically, but I can't imagine that there isn't.
But it would be good, that's a great question. I agree with Des, but it's good to back it up with.
I mean,
some
are there
data.
markers someplace
Yeah.
in that deep dive of data?
Mhm.
Are there markers that would indicate to us?
The
This
health of
is-
the system.
Yeah, is this is this really
Mhm.
worth us putting, you know, time and energy into? Because it, you know, in other districts, it's created a real windfall.
Yes, that I can say yes to, in a general sense. I couldn't speak to Oregon or like the WESD, but actually within Youth Truth, when you go into their website, they have a ton of case studies that they've said, okay, schools that did this kind of research and use the data to do these kind of implementations are seeing these kind of impacts.
Okay.
So yes, there's some case studies that they've done, and they like to push out to us because it keeps us coming back to use the survey.
Sure.
So they've done a lot of research in that.
And we get, you know, we get some consultant time with her name's Whitney, she works with us, she's responds to every email that I send her like that, and so. And we can get some one-on-one coaching with our principals, with what we pay for with this, so that our principals can have an expert help them unpack you know, the results from their schools, so.
Is this a private company, like?
It's a nonprofit.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the other piece, just to kind of cap all this, right now, the way it's always been set up is we've done the intermediate, middle and high. We have, Dan and I are gonna take all the questions and build a parent survey ourselves for the primary school parents. So that we do gather that data from them, but next year they will be included in the youth troop. They just hadn't historically been, because the questions aren't ones you would ask. They're automatically designed 3 through 5th. So even if we had a K through 5 school, they would only do it 3 through 5th. So they just kind of got cut out of the process for some reason. But we're gonna take and build basically Google Forms that ask staff and family surveys so that they can be included in those. The parent survey actually goes out. It's the exact same link for all of them. So we can still send it to the parents and not even have to do anything, but we'll make one for the staff specifically. So we have parent or staff feedback from the primary school. So
And it's unanimous, like.
anonymous.
Anonymous?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everyone
Yeah.
taking-
Yeah, so much so that if there isn't a certain percentage that is taken, they don't give us the data.
Hmm.
So if there was like a question, like only 2% answered, they would not give us, so that we could potentially like, suss out like who might have answered that question, they just don't, they just admit it completely, so.
Any questions? Cause then I just realized I looked at the agenda and we've got policy reviews still to do, but I'm still passionate about this, so.
That's good. We're paid for this year, is that an annual?
It's part of, it's not something we, it's part of our, agreement with the WESD, it's part of the resolution dollars, so we do it through that.
So it's not an additional fee to us, we just.
No.
Participate.
In fact, I believe, Linda, I think it's through our membership to the Willamette curriculum kind of group, right? Isn't that what it's through specifically?
I would have to look it up, I don't know that. That's all.
Okay, well, then I will not say again, but what it is, so.
Yeah, this is exciting. Great presentation. I would just like to stress that communication to families about this is anonymous and this is how we're gonna use your feedback would go really far, because in the past when we've had, we've had low participation, but also people not wanting to take the survey because they don't think it's anonymous. They don't feel safe to be honest, but if we can promise that, yes, we'll even take the critical feedback and do something with it, I think we'll get higher participation rate.
Before we move on, any last minute questions? Good. All right, so the OSBA rewrite, portion of it, I'm gonna pass it over to Jenny. She ran it last time. I got feedback that she did fantastic. So we will do that again, and I don't know if it was you or Dan that started. Or how you rolled it, so.
It was Dan
Was.
who started it, who kicked us off.
All right, I thought you
Tag
did.
teamed you.
I'm fine to, if we wanna jump into it, or do you wanna take a quick little break? This is probably gonna be a couple hours.
No, let's fire through,
Okay.
unless you need a break, Kelsey.
I will, but I'm good right now.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Does that work for you?
I'm good right now.
Okay, you
Let's
just
go.
give me a little,
A little love,
you
okay.
just give me a little nod when you're ready. Okay, we'll continue.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I think, so we're picking up on, I'm looking there,
GAA.
yep.
Section G.
And so the way we did this last time was, I've put comments in there, Rick Stuckey has a few comments in there. But really, I think if there are additional questions or clarifications or discussions, we'll take them, and if not, we'll just kind of keep moving through,
Let's do it.
okay?
Okay. Welcome back to my channel. So you guys should have done your homework just like last time, so hopefully we can power through these. GAA is the first policy we'll review. Mr. Stutzman, that's you.
And, I didn't do my homework very well, but my notes tell me that, this was an informational question only on my part, and I can discuss that with someone who knows more than I, later.
Okay.
and that I assume the salary questions are answered in the contract. So I think I'm okay with that.
Okay,
I was just hoping, I know my name's on quite a few of these, just to elicit some discussion so that I know what's in these policies and better understand. I didn't have a intention there.
okay. Would you say that's the same for the second one, GAB under job
And
descriptions?
GAB is somewhat the same thing, although I would observe that our policy asks that we make job descriptions available, and I think superintendent said he's going to be working on that.
Yeah, I've been talking with Dina about how we get those posted to our website. And so we would
Mhm.
definitely like to get all of our job descriptions on our website and be made available. So,
Is there, like, due by date or like,
how about I give you
aspirational?
aspirational date,
Yeah.
by,
February,
yes, thank you. I was thinking maybe a little bit sooner, but
realistic.
yeah.
Okay, let's go February. Okay, the next one was me. I'm happy to hear about a process. I'm fine with the answer that you provided, but you said in here we could talk about a quick little process about, you'll share our process and in some internal improvements on how we hire employees.
Yeah, so we could come back with how what our hiring process looks like.
Yeah, I'm fine to do that another time.
Yeah, and I met with Dina, you know, we're not utilizing our software to the fullest extent that would actually track all of our processes and lock it down from the minute if a principal said, I need to hire a new English teacher, and they should be able to submit what's called a requisition. And then HR in the business office say, yep, you're good to go. And then when I'm pointing at Deanne, because she's, you know, so when Deanne gets ready, I found my English teacher, then she should be able to go in and articulate all the steps that she followed in recommending somebody to be hired. And that should all be able to happen electronically. And then also be able to, besides the electronic part, be able to, I can come back and present, what does those processes look like? But all of them quickly in the month of August is all of our teachers that we hired had an interview with me and had to teach our kids before they got hired. And those are two critical components, is that no one talks their way into a job and everybody has to teach in front of our kids before they get hired.
How long do they teach? Is it just like one day kind of thing?
It's probably-
30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like a lesson, a sample lesson.
Okay.
So we utilize summer school big time. So when they hired like a couple of, you know, like a first grade teacher, then say, hey, we've got a summer school, come in here, bring a lesson, and we're gonna watch you teach. So, yeah,
Thank you.
and I think we got we did a math teacher and, we just told some of I think the volleyball students to ASB say,
Put your math on.
and I think we probably went with pizza. And we said, come in and this person's gonna teach you math for 30 minutes. So,
Next one, GB, Merle, that was you.
My question about substitute teacher was answered. The policy just said substitute, and I was clarifying.
Okay,
And it is substitute teacher. It seemed pretty intuitive and correct. And then I had a question about first aid cards. And some have and some do not. And I understand that must be okay with state of Oregon these days. At one time, you were required to have first aid card. But I see the policy says may, so that's satisfactory answer for me.
the next one is GBA. Your question was answered in the comments on
Yeah,
that.
question was answered. Okay.
Next one, GBE, staff health and safety. Did you have? any
That
additional
question,
questions?
or I flagged it just because I thought, and when I read a number of these policies that had to do with Oregon OSHA's requirements, that perhaps they could be consolidated in a handbook or a program and several policies deleted, but I've kind of given up on that. So we'll
Okay,
let the policy stand, but
all
here's
right.
a thought I had for possible discussion.
Your next one, GBEB, yes, we do have an AR, so can I mark that one as complete as well?
Yes, you do, and
Okay.
I went back and found it, and so I'm okay. And
Okay, and then the next one, it looks like it is removed from policy samples.
they're both delete, I did not find them, but
Okay.
my afternoon didn't admit looking very fine.
The next one is me, so I'm fine if it's deleted, but I did have just a quick question about who operates the taxis that are in the district. There's like van taxis that say Marion School District on the back of them.
Yeah, so we contract with the individual taxi companies.
Okay,
And then because they're transporting our students, we label that. So
okay,
it's a private company that we contract through.
okay, thank you. GBF is the next one. That's you, Merle, on staff participation.
That's about a two-liner, and I think we say we're okay to delete that one.
Well,
Is that the one we are?
That-
I just make a comment,
Yeah.
it's good to encourage community involvement, I have no qualms with that, but if whether we need that policy in there, I'm okay with deleting it, but.
I looked at 4 other districts and none of them had that policy, so I kind of just base it on whether, is everybody doing this? Does it one that have to have? So I am fine deleting that policy.
Are other people fine believing that?
Anybody have heartache about deleting it? Okay,
I mean, it is from 91.
when? Just kidding.
90. Yeah,
Next one is you, Crystal, GDV.
yeah, so political activities, I was more inclined to have information around this, how do I put this? So say we're coming into a heated political season. And how we keep that regulated to keep it outside of our classrooms, and we have a standard of there. Because less to be determined by the teacher on the moment and more to be a regulation, that's the standard. Does that make sense?
I think I know what you're getting at, in terms of just not wanting.
So I want like there to be a upper level accountability, and you said that IMB course guides could cover this concern.
Well, I felt like that perhaps your concern was covered in policy INB, which we will get to, or we could look at it now. And then I also think that, I don't know, not being familiar, if we have, kind of course guides or syllabus that talk about what things are covered, to where making sure any areas that might be more susceptible towards, controversy, but I mean, this particular policy is, I think, pretty clear about what staff are allowed to do. But when it comes to the curricular, I'm looking for,
Oh, yeah, I see where you are. Yeah, I'm fine with that. We can deal with IMB.
okay,
Moving on then?
Mhm.
Any
Yeah,
other
that's fine.
thoughts about it? Okay,
I think I flagged IMB.
okay, and Merle, you
No,
have something to say about that
that
one?
was one I was concerned about too, when it speaks to various candidates, various issues, controversial issues where people differ. Who defines controversial? And who monitors
Good
in the
question.
classroom? And further, I know, I think it's Heidi raised question of, are we persuading? Or are we just laying out information? And when you have a teacher-student relationship, it's almost a given that there's a certain amount of, call it respect or commandeering
Mhm.
that's imparted just by virtue of the setting and the situation. And so I certainly lean toward keeping politics muted and out of it as much as possible, but how far you can go with mandates but again, I think it's a valid question for us to consider, is who monitors and who defines controversial.
yeah. Well, I think controversial becomes one of those things that we'll know it when we see it sort of thing, and. But I think, I agree with you, Merle, that. Students will always have some sense of, authority or, deference to the teacher being kind of having a little bit of knowledge, but. I will also say that I think most students know when the classroom is fair and impartial, even if a teacher is. I mean, I know as a history teacher that sometimes I did have to play a little bit of devil's advocate to get conversations between students flowing. Not that I was taking sides on issues, but trying to, on certain issues, especially for younger kids, I was middle school, so things were still kind of formulating there and trying to get kids to think more critically versus being so black and white and trying to pose a question that was intended to be thought provoking, not necessarily indoctrinating, if that makes sense. And so, and I think it's always how our teachers respond to students, parents' concerns if something gets voiced. Was a line crossed and is a teacher willing to kind of say, yeah, it was not my intent to make your student feel less than, or that their opinion was wrong. My fear is if we ever take the approach of trying to sanitize our classrooms too much, we actually are doing kids a disservice by not making them think critically. I think our teachers, for the most part, do a really good job of navigating those lines, and then we just need to course correct when people may cross one. So. That was a little bit of a tangent, but.
That's okay.
From your standpoint, does this policy give you enough teeth
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, this is
To correct things when they
Yes.
do, as you say,
Yeah.
get into an area that makes,
Mhm.
that you can, it when you see it, but.
Right,
'Cause I'm
Yeah.
assuming this is boilerplate for most what other districts have,
yes.
um.
And as I told you before, I'm working on an FAQ or a document around, political, with the election coming up, and I'll probably get that done, should get that done this week. And so it outlines what you can and can't do from a legal standpoint. It cites the Secretary of State's office, it cites, I now have it memorized, I think it's ORS 260-432 that outlines what you can and can't do. So it's pretty, and it has 4 different board policies, or will have 4 different board policies that outline what they can and can't do. So I think I'm good.
Okay, moving on then to GBH. Merle, this was you.
No,
And this policy was last revised, readopted in 2019, so.
oh,
you're-
was it?
Yeah,
Well, I might have the wrong one in focus. There was a policy that had to do with parents requesting opt-out that we worked through since I've been on the board, and I sent to superintendent
Yeah.
a rewrite of that, and I didn't take time. I can't say I didn't have time. I want to, but
I remember.
I
that
didn't
in
do
the
that
fall.
this afternoon and to
Mhm.
go back and find it. I suggested a rewrite, and essentially, we never took action on it as far as I know. And it was
Mhm.
probably in the archives or in the round file somewhere.
Okay, I do remember that. It was in December that we talked about it,
Is that
right?
right?
That was the
Okay.
same, it was like
So
December.
maybe we can
7th.
let that be one that I can bring back
Okay,
Yep. Later. And just accept it as it is for now. I'll look for it.
okay, the next one, GBN. It looks like you made a comment about it. There was some omissions, but it.
Well,
there was
but I
nothing
didn't
submitted?
find it to review it, was my
Okay.
comment, so
Oh, okay.
I'll admit it's probably my fault and.
Next one is also UGBNAA. I think we're deleting this policy. Are you okay with that?
I guess so. I don't have any notes about that one.
Okay.
Is that a
Next,
delete?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
you had made the suggestion to delete, but it was already recommended for deletion in
Okay.
April.
Back one is, will this be changed? On the sexual harassment, when it says Bill Rose as superintendent still?
Oh, good call out.
Which one, where's that one at?
That is on GBN,
Previous. Mhm.
on page 2, under item 3. It calls out Bill Rhodes as the superintendent, and that needs to be changed.
Oh, good catch.
should there actually be a name in there? Is it required to have a name in that?
They've started to come out with some of these policies where they actually do name the person, which has not been, for the very reason for changes and whatnot, but like in the Title IX sort of things that you actually have to specifically name the person.
Yeah, I don't think so. Cheryl,
Yes, ma'am.
how do you spell your name?
CHARYL.
Okay, just check, double check it. And then you might have to update that. I don't know if
Say it
the.
on It's positions rather than people.
Some of the.
No, it's regulated now. It's regulated now.
Any other comments?
Is
on
this fine to
GBN?
keep?
Yeah, sorry. Yep, no. Okay. No, you're fine, don't be sorry. Okay, moving on, GBNAA. Oh, that was the one that we just did,
Yeah,
the
that's
delete, okay, GC, licensed staff positions,
I was reading the strikeouts, so I'm fine with that.
Okay,
okay. GCAB, you wanted some clarification, Merle?
That's one that, I don't have further questions, but it relates to cell phones. And so I think it's a subject that's prime for discussion at some point, but not necessarily related to this policy.
Okay.
Social media, cell phones, they're used,
Oh, this one was for
Staff.
staff.
yeah, for that.
Yeah,
Um,
okay,
and that's the question it raises for me, is how much cell phone use there is. It's so pervasive. Yeah, I have no handle on it, really.
okay, we can
I'm
take
okay
with
with
that.
policy.
Next one is also you, GCBDA. Are you okay with,
Yes, I'm okay with that. I say if we're compliant, that seemed a little mysterious to me. Isn't that the Family Medical Leave Act? And they say in the policy, this is for 25 to 50 employees. But another phrase says it's for 50+ employees, so I assume the same policy applies to both, but I couldn't actually find that written there. And that,
Are you talking about the Oregon paid leave site? Their regulations for the Oregon paid leave site?
yeah,
Cause the Oregon paid leave site has different regulations for different size companies.
mhm. And that's what this indicates. It just isn't clear if we're the right category for the 50+, but I assume we are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Check that out, so.
Yeah.
Don't worry, they'll let us know.
okay, that's probably the same thing for the next one was another paid family leave.
My question there was, do we have the posters up?
Oh, on the insurance ones? I don't know.
We should check on that.
Or any of them, yes, in every building.
Yes, you said Linda, okay.
Linda confirms.
All right, next one was me, IFCA. Yeah, my question is answered. Next one is also me, IGAP. I'm okay if we keep the parental notification in there. And it looks like OSBA said that it's fine to leave the language, so unless anybody has any heartache on that one.
So this is, I'm just gonna make sure I have my notes. So this is in the principal or designee. So is it all that strikeout in number 1?
Let me get to it.
Yes. Yeah, I want that in there too.
Yeah. Yes, in item number 1.
Correct.
If that's okay, nobody has any issues with that? Okay. IGAI. This is one that both Heidi and I, brought up, and I wanted to try and go back to the original policy, which was pretty simple. I feel like this is or does have the potential for controversy. I think this policy may require a deeper dive. The board shall approve the plan of instruction and require that it be reviewed and updated biannually is on that policy, and I don't think, at least in my history, I've never seen that. So I don't know if we want to table this one for maybe something longer or.
Yeah, I think my recommendation, since it's not required, highly recommended, not required, is, we table it for kind of a work group to work on it.
Okay. Table it is. All right, and next one, both Heidi and I again on IGAJ, the driver education. We don't have that. We haven't had it for a while, so we're okay with reading that policy. Next one, I'm sorry, I'm probably going really fast. Does anybody have? Good. So feel free to interrupt if I will. Oh, I know you. IGBAG.
Are we never gonna get a driver ed program again?
I think it's funded through the state, isn't it?
I think there's probably better options out there for families, through, colleges and other options, so.
It's going away because the insurance doesn't, not all insurance agencies give them a discount.
Oh, yeah.
Most don't anymore.
Or they have their own program.
So they have their own program, and it's not something that schools are pushing for anymore because of liability.
Is there any kind of education for parents about like, hey, these are the things that you can do in the area? Or has there ever been any parents that have asked?
No.
Okay.
I haven't had anybody.
Yeah,
Cheryl says
I
yes.
have, I've actually had them, and actually for themselves.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we've helped some families get connected with driver classes for themselves,
Cool.
so they can
Okay.
get their licenses, so.
But we don't need a
We've done
policy
that.
on that.
Awesome.
Okay, IGBAG, that is me again. I'm fine with the answer, and that's the same for the next 3. Heidi is not here to talk about IDH class sizes. Superintendent agrees with OSB's recommended changes, so this is IDH if anybody has, IHB, I'm sorry. If anybody has any input on this one.
No, I did talk to Heidi, she said whatever we decided she was good with.
Okay, does anybody have any input on that? Nope, nope.
No,
Right, moving on. Doesn't look like Heidi really had anything for IIABB.
is this our most current? Didn't we do one where we had criminal notification somewhere? On films? Wasn't it recently, we had a long conversation?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we put
this
like
one's
a-
old, this one says 97.
97.
It's in the HAR, it's 2023.
Okay,
AHR.
No, the AR on this one, the next AR.
you see me pull that out of my recesses from like a year ago?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, it was my
Was it?
first year.
So these two are consistent then, right?
Yeah, the policy hasn't changed.
The policy doesn't reflect the AR or does? Yeah, no,
That I can tell you right off the top of my head.
okay.
And are the principals still receiving requests to show films? Yes, yes, yeah. Okay. Good, okay.
Wait, I'm not okay. Uh. Additionally, or other non-rated media prior parental consent will be required. I think the key here was other non-rated media. The parental consent will include information from the points above.
We're looking at the AR right now, for those that want to follow along.
Yeah, this piece. It's. It's about the fifth paragraph down on the AR, so it's talking about having the same. So this. AR says use of feature films, videos in schools or other media. And the IIABB says use of feature films or videos only. We need to include other media in there, so then it applies to. Everything else under the sun, including the internet and any other YouTube or anything that's not there. So I think we need to probably do some work on this policy, so
What
that.
What if we did, so like we did on a couple of them last month, we put some notes on here. And
Mhm,
then if we can get it back to you with some changes,
mhm. Yeah,
so.
cause there's this, I mean, cause we worked extensively on here to keep parent notification in process, and then to make sure all media was included, not just feature films and videos.
Okay.
So we need to broaden,
Yeah, so the AR is how we want it. The policy needs to match our AR.
okay,
And. Yeah, so Dan's gonna make changes and then when we come back, we'll say.
Yeah.
With the changes we approve, okay,
assuming you like the changes.
assuming we like the.
You'll know if I don't.
So we're gonna both these together.
Well, I wouldn't say table, because at least
No.
when I say table, I'm
Yeah.
pushing months out ahead. We are going to
No.
come back with changes based on what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so hopefully. In one of his emails, we'll receive a copy of this to overview to decide if we wanna adopt it at the next. October 14th, which would be ideal.
Okay.
So. The AR is very close and accurate to what we went through extensively. And so the policy just needs to match that in some language.
Change the wording.
So the AR is okay, it's the policy that needs to.
Yeah.
change. Okay, any other thoughts? No? Planning good? Kinda?
Seems like we're getting micromanaging, but. I just say, I mean. Clarify, so when you say media,
Mm-hmm,
does that include a YouTube video that our shop class is gonna be shown in shop class? Cause if we need a paper form filled out.
no,
all
it's
of that,
talking
that's-
about like sexually
That
explicit,
might be rated.
Okay, which is fine, but
yeah,
if we write a policy. And blanket a lot of, over blanket things,
most will not. Meet the threshold because of 1 through 6.
Well, there's a lot of YouTube skits and videos that are shown, like especially in the middle school, that I think need parent involvement.
I mean, I think there's misuse of a policy for, a welding class, person's gonna show, we've all gone to YouTube to learn how to change something, right? So I think that's not what the
No.
intent of the policy is.
No.
But I will say that because there's so much media now doesn't fall under those rating systems that I mean, as a principal, I had that issue with. You know, somebody wanted to show something and not being able to point to a policy and going like, how do I regulate this when I don't? You know, it's easy when it falls under one of those, you know, well, it's R and it's a middle school, so the answer is no.
So the answer.
You know,
Sure.
it's that sort of thing versus something like, I don't know how to apply a rating to something that's not rated, but. It's questionable.
Yeah.
So that's the piece where I do support broadening the language of the policy. For the intent of trying to better regulate non-rated media.
Okay.
But also not abusing it to the shop teacher who wants to show how to.
Well, I'm good with
Yeah.
that. I just don't want to
Mhm.
over bureaucratize
Right,
your system where you.
right.
Yeah,
where
so
it's-
bogged down, yeah.
Yeah, where you get bogged down. and you
Merle,
can't-
you had a,
I'm just observing that the AR does say edited or unrated films, videos will be shown at the discretion of the building administrator, so if that's maybe too broad, but we could, well, that's up to superintendent to edit.
But I will say that at least in that, it does put some oversight by the administrator and at least the teacher then hopefully is having conversations with the principal about, hey, I'm thinking about showing something. What are your thoughts on this? And there's obviously that teacher showing some discretion and thought, the principal's thoughtful about it. And then wanting to move forward could do permission slips or something along those lines. So at least we're having people think through decision making before just pushing play on something that maybe they shouldn't. And so I do think that that's probably adequate for the AR. I like the suggestions of broadening the language in the policy so that we are realizing that we're not just dealing with
Mhm.
traditional rating systems. That's why I want that broadened in the policy.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this.
I'm fine
Okay.
with
Yeah.
age appropriate, like there's things.
Yeah,
Should not be
exactly.
shown in school, for sure.
Yeah.
However, I just don't wanna overload. You know
Yes.
what I mean, with
Right.
a bunch of paperwork.
I hear you. Okay, moving on from IABB, last call. Moving on, IKA, the grading system. Dan, you said that this would be a good conversation for the board and superintendent to discuss in the winter or the spring, so is this a table or?
This is definitely, I mean, I would adopt it, and with with the trimester in there, as it's presented, I would adopt it, if I'm reading between the lines of what Heidi's saying, is more of like, I think maybe the board would like to have a discussion around semesters versus trimesters and from just how we run our schools and do reporting and scheduling and all of those other things. So I'd be open, if that is of interest to the board, to have something in conversation with the board in the winter and spring. Not to really hold up the policy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. That's not necessarily a policy discussion, but it's, I think it's a discussion that's probably. I know Heidi would like to have it, and
Yeah.
I'd be interested in engaging at least in.
okay,
their
so are we
discussion.
okay with approving it and then talking about it in the spring?
I'm good with the language, I don't know.
Okay. Robert or Merle, do you guys have any?
Yeah, I'm okay with approving it.
Okay,
Seems like it'd be kind of a major change.
okay, so IKAB is me and my, I was answered on that one. IKAD, I read your response on that and I'm still kind of confused. I went out and, so I just want a quick little, like, what exactly is this? I think the actual OAR or the ORS 339.280 is so much cleaner. And the way that I kind of like interpreted this policy was that, you know, we have a student that is getting a decent grade, but they're never at class, could be denied credit, or if a kid's failing class, but they're always there, they could be granted credit when they don't understand. So I just kind of wanted to know a little bit more about this, and then the last part of my question was, at what point is a parent notice given, like end of the trimester or midway through, or like, you know? That's all. I'm not looking to necessarily change the way that it's written, because I don't think anybody else has any heartache over it, but we can talk about it later too. I'm totally fine with that.
So you thought the ORS was more clear?
I did, yeah.
The 329-485,
339280.
280, the one of it.
Yeah, so I'll take a look at the ORS and, you know, and if we think that, I mean, there was clearly taken from that ORS and maybe the wordsmithing, nothing against OSBA, maybe the wordsmithing didn't quite make it clear, maybe the ORS is clear, so I'll review the ORS.
Okay,
Have we done this before?
I don't know. Dan, Des, sure, no.
It's something you can use as a carrot to like get a kid to come.
Would we actually ever do that though? If the kid is like passing in class and being like, you need to show up because you're affecting our numbers, we're gonna take away your credit?
I don't see a time when that would ever happen.
Yeah.
But where it comes from was when credit was awarded based on Carnegie units. So seat time, your butt is in the seat, so you get the
So
credit.
we're gonna pass
Yeah.
you for just being here.
No, you would never get, you would rarely see it like you were here, so you get a pass. Like unless it is truly like, something that is a participation based grade.
Like, well, the PE hours are really like structured around that.
Mhm. But even that, there's still standards that kids have to
Right.
demonstrate that they've mastered or are
Yeah.
showing progression towards. So it really, the policy just comes from that older, they literally, it was Carnegie units is what they were called, and we still technically, with Division 22, we measure whether or not we have met our requirements based on seat time. So when I submit to the state, like, yes, we've met our minimum hours, it is butts in seats. We can't count passing time, we can't count lunch, we can't count assemblies, we can't count, you know, any of those things. It is when you are in class. And so it used to be that credit was connected to that as well.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
I'm fine with this, what I would say is, I mean, you could have an AR, but if. Like. The only thing I would say is, do we legally have to have this document? But I'm fine with it the way it
I mean,
is.
we do have the ORS, but yeah, do we need to have? a
I
policy?
would say, I mean, what I like about this is if someone is going to go to the steps of. Using attendance, at least this is what they have to do, but I would hope that we would not be,
I mean, I would hope.
yeah. So
I'm fine with
I
it.
think it's a general enough policy in alignment with the law that we should
It's up
keep
to
it, but
you.
we can look at the language to see if the ORS is better.
Yeah, I would request that, just, I mean, if I'm having trouble with it, there might be others that are also having trouble with it, but. That'd be great.
Okay.
But if it seems like it's the same thing, I'm fine passing
So
it.
is that part of the approval list, or we?
Yeah, I think it'll be part of the approval list. I mean,
I think it will be,
yeah,
yeah.
next one. IKF, that's me. I actually answered my own question today. If that new state law is until 2027. And Heidi was also on that, so we're gonna keep moving along. Heidi had IMB AR for the continuous improvement plan, and she'd like to discuss this policy. Dan said that we could discuss this on 10/28. So is this a table?
Well, it's an AR, so I think it could really just go forward with, as it is.
Okay.
I mean, I think,
I suspect Heidi probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, Len, I suspect Heidi probably wants to know where we're at in this process.
Could be.
Yeah, don't you think? Like, are we still doing this? Yeah.
Okay. So I
But we
can,
could also, I mean, I would say we could adopt it on the 14th, but we could use it as a guide.
Mhm.
On our work session on the 28th.
I'm okay with that. Are you guys too? Okay. Next is Crystal, IND studying controversial issues.
Yeah, so my biggest thing was, just how we're talking about a lot of systemness, and that's why when prior buildings were more in the silo areas where they didn't collaborate as well, I was thinking from the lines of having like the director of teaching and learning for approval beyond the principals is to like standardize, like this is how, or this is our expectations. To have like a real broad base to it. But, yeah, that was kind of my thought. Is how we're trying to do systemness amongst all of them. So it wasn't like middle school, it does it this way, high school does it this way, it's just like an expectation amongst all.
Well, I think the last part of this where it says before beginning a class in a study of an obviously controversial topic, a teacher will discuss with the principal. And I think in terms of your concerns around systems, I think that, I mean, we're meeting and, you know, we meet twice a month as a principal group for
Mhm.
90 minutes and I wouldn't say we've talked about this, but we do so far, and I'm looking at my colleagues to try to collaborate around how do we make decisions on how we roll things out. So for instance, you know, making some improvements to Power School, I realize apples to oranges, but we talk about when the decision is gonna be made, who's gonna carry out the conversation. And then we talk about, we talk about making sure our bunnies don't get in other people's yards. So in other words,
Yeah.
we make sure that we do things consistently so that we don't have these issues. So I think the principals are fully capable of it because when we have these kinds of issues, we talk about how we're going to apply them consistently.
Okay.
So,
Can I have one additional piece, which is they're really good in the AR like steps you would take. There's an element of how you would apply those that would be slightly different at each level. Because what is controversial for a third grade classroom, different from a high school classroom, right? Where the critical thinking skills that we're trying to help them build, et cetera. So thinking through those pieces and then I think for, you know, like Dan said, we're then there to give additional support. When it's like, how do I navigate this? Or how do I encourage my teacher to like, this is probably not a topic we should tackle. This is not gonna help kids feel safe or like they belong if this is how, you know, but ultimately. The controversial topic policy is to allow good debate, good discussions, to help, how do you navigate something that's controversial? And allow kids to have their own opinions.
I will say, there has been an exceptional job on this year, so I'll just make a note of it and drag it in from the depths if needed.
Okay. All right, moving on, the next one is also you, INB G1, kind of along the same lines. These are the steps that should be followed.
Yeah, and I'd say the same sort of thing, is this just during school hours or at all times?
are we,
On description?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, where am I?
where are we?
We're looking at INB G1.
I don't
It's
have
not in
that,
there.
and I don't have its link.
Written down.
Oh, you know what I bet? I bet it was the two different versions. Cause when I opened mine, it was like multiple versions.
Oh, okay,
I think so.
all right, so.
G1 would be the new version 2.
Yeah.
Moving on then, ING, that's me, talking about animals in the district.
I was like, I don't remember asking questions about animals, but since I'm here. Here's the house. No, just kidding.
Me, yeah, so and this kind of goes with the second one, the AR is if the animal's in school, not a service animal. Does that really happen? Are people bringing animals to school that aren't service?
Well, okay, no. So listen, what about when the
Outside of show.
what's about when the
FFA or?
like brings theirs, like this doesn't tie their hands or anything?
I would think not, usually in those classes, it's for a specific class
Okay.
and it's a temporary situation.
Yeah, not for educational purposes or special events or, you know, I think this is policies talking about, you know, on a more regular basis of having an animal. Yeah.
And the policy just called out requesting emergency contact information. For what? What are we doing with this? I don't know. I'm fine to move forward with that. I just thought it was kind of written silly. Well,
All right.
Well, and I think that I did look at this AR and think that we should find a new one. So. I wouldn't
I'm
mind,
fine with it.
yeah.
Do you have service animals for a giveaway on just
We did last year.
Mhm. Yeah.
a dog or?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cause I think the I could be wrong, when I was on legislative policy committee. They actually approved horses. as-
Yeah.
As a service animal.
A minute.
Yeah, the little
Yeah.
ones.
No, it's in rule.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and so I didn't know what, you know, what sort of variety are we talking
Yeah.
about? I mean, that's, and not that you could exclude, you know what I mean, if they're a service animal, I wouldn't, but
Yes.
I was surprised to see that language show up.
They're actually pretty lovable. Those little minis. I don't know if I'd want to take one to school, but they are very sweet.
Angry.
No.
Sure, they're all angry.
Okay, just checking. Does anybody need a break? We're at 10 till 8. No?
Good.
Okay.
All right, moving on, next page, Crystal, JFC, JG.
So this was a hot topic. And I can't remember where it fell, but when we did this approval. It had to do with, like at the bus stop and then outside the bus stop. So I think that's why we had some of that. Do you remember that, Glenn? We talked extensively about that. While off campus.
Yeah, and really what the schools.
Yeah.
Responsibility and or purview.
Yeah.
Should be limited to.
So mine was. What did they say here? Students are subject to discipline.
Just go up to the first black, from the bottom.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So where it says while at other schools in the district and while off campus. So,
Could add in. While off campus at a school sponsored event or something.
yeah, I mean, cause that. Definitely,
Really broad.
yeah, I know, I don't think
I'm
it
not
even
sure
should
how
be
you
there.
enforce a policy like this.
I think it's
with any
infringement.
consistency when you have when the language says off campus, that's just me, but.
I would rather have while off campus removed.
so I think that one of the things that with some of the new Title IX legislation and stuff, that if events that happen off campus. Come in, and so the qualifier to that is while off campus, whenever such conduct causes substantial and material disruption of the educational environment. Or the invasion of rights of others, so that's where,
That's where
so
the caveat is.
that's why you have this. off campus in these situations. So either something happens on the weekend that, you know, throws your whole school off on Monday, and then how did that behavior, and can you, you know, what can you do about that? But I think really it's a lot of the Title IX stuff, that if there's something that happens, if there's a Title IX violation that happens off campus, comes into school and creates disruption, we have a responsibility to follow the Title IX regs.
Can we add possibly? And possibly while off campus?
Yeah, I think try and control weekend events is, it's gonna be super hard, even if it does come into school.
I don't know, this would be one of those that I kind of want like Elizabeth.
Mhm.
I don't know, what do you think, Glenn? Cause that's just, I'm really uncomfortable with that
Well,
one.
we've also dealt with this issue in the real world.
Yeah,
We've had
yeah,
this issue come up before. I don't have any good answers. I really don't. I don't know. I understand. We don't wanna hamstring our, you know, our staff. But like in the virtual world, you know, social media world, virtual world, where's that line? You know, where's that line? And
I
that's,
think here's where,
it's a very slippery slope if we start trying to police in a way that we have
Yeah.
no business policing, so.
so I think that, so I totally agree with you, and I think our principals would like not to have to, you know, manage behavior that happens off campus, but I think that I will say from a risk management perspective, our ability to say that did happen at school, not our problem, could also get us sued. So we have to be mindful of what responsibilities, because when these kids do things off campus and then they come into our school and we say, sorry, that didn't happen at our school, and kids are feeling, and I realize we could probably regulate the behavior that happens on campus, like the teasing or something that happens from that, we could probably do that. But I would rather keep the language, because even though we are not going to go out to look to regulate off-campus behavior, our ability to say that didn't happen here, not our problem, I think does open us up for litigation from somebody who says, no, you do have a responsibility because my kid's now impacted at school.
There's also the reverse of that. If we stick our noses in places that they shouldn't be, do we open ourselves up for a lawsuit? Because we've been down that road too.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
I don't wanna,
Mhm.
you know, I'm also considering it from a, you know, from a liability standpoint. And, I don't know, I don't have any good answers. I completely hear what you're saying, and I, you know, you know, in the back of my mind, if it affects your learning environment, it's your business. I think, you know what I mean, and I think you need to be able to, you need to be empowered enough to be able to step in.
I'm gonna
But if
say,
it doesn't, I'm not, you
Yeah.
know, and I don't know how to encapsulate that really well in
I would
policies.
I would be willing to have Elizabeth have a look and give us a second opinion on if there's a different word we could use. I just, from experience, this is a very slippery slope. And if there's a different way to say it besides saying while off campus, which means in somebody's own home, then we aren't gonna cross, like, really to hold the parental line on that.
No, I think that's a good, I mean, because I think you know, what you brought up, Glenn, of, you know, overreach that could lead to litigation too is equally important to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So, so I think that having Rebecca weigh in on this is worthwhile.
Yeah, I'd feel more comfortable if.
Yeah.
We're not lawyers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, cause they might just say hard no, you
Right.
guys really need to, but they might be like, you could actually word it this way better. So it's not like an invasion of privacy.
Mhm.
They might be able to just word that a little differently, really, when you read this more carefully, it talks about traveling. It brings up the question, are we liable when we're on a school bus traveling here?
Yeah.
We probably are.
I think,
Are we liable when they're standing there at the bus stop? Probably are. Traveling from their house to the bus stop, maybe not. But this says different scenarios like traveling to another school. And then just adds that phrase, while away from school, which all of these situations are, the bus.
Yeah.
The other school, and maybe that's really what it's meant to say, not just blanket.
Well,
away from
and
school.
I
And we could
agree.
pull that back in
I think,
with
I
different,
mean,
better wording.
I could ask, but you need to be empowered to be able to act at other
Mhm.
schools because
Yeah,
we interact with other
absolutely.
schools at sporting events, at
Hmm.
competitions, and you have to have, you have to be able to enforce rules and good
Mhm.
conduct, in that. So I'm not opposed to that. It's when we get into people's
Personal.
Yeah.
personal stuff.
Alright, let's.
Then it's a gray area, so.
So we tell legal our concern and say maybe you can sharpen.
So
it
just for the record,
to protect
Dan's
us.
gonna follow up with legal,
On those two policies.
yeah, and then he'll loop around.
Okay.
So on JVC, which one was the other one?
JFC and JG.
Student conduct, student discipline.
And I think
Okay,
that's the
yeah.
same sort of thing while off campus there, that they added in.
All right, moving on to JHC, Crystal.
Did they remove the blue? So I wasn't,
We were talking
the
about.
recommended,
Mhm.
the recommended language is not required to be in the policy, but it is a statute. So here's my only problem, like, there is like a national nursing shortage. So I would rather not have this in policy and just know it's in a statute. Because if the statute has like, oh, we know that this is like best case scenario, but in the event of, and they do this all the time in healthcare. This particular situation where we don't have enough staff, we will allow XYZ to happen. If we have it in our policy like this, then we're holding ourselves accountable to something we may not always be able to maintain. Where the government will give you leeway in their statutes depending on the environment.
This policy talks about that we would need to have 125 medically fragile children. What's the definition of medically fragile or even medically complex? Does that mean 2 or more?
There's actually a checklist of about 10 to 15 markers, and then you add all that up, and that's the number.
Do you know how many medically?
You were gonna ask me.
I'm sorry, girl.
No, we did the report to ODE in June. I don't know off the top of my head. We're close.
We're close to that. Okay, so maybe it does need a little bit more attention about the numbers of RNs.
Well, if that's not required, I'd just get rid of that whole piece and just refer to the statute.
Yeah.
Cause the statute is constantly changing, like they've changed, we have like a list at work,
Yeah,
they change it like every legislation, I'm not
Right.
kidding.
I
Yeah.
think it'd be easy to do that. What are your thoughts, Dan?
So I'm just saying, consider removal and we'll discuss it and we'll hopefully bring it back for adoption.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was just, I mean, I'm okay either way, it's just realistically, I don't know how well you're going to be able. And are we gonna be able to change our policy as quick as the legislation changes healthcare mandates? Is the answer.
No. Yeah, I mean, they're constantly changing. Okay, I'll mark that one as table for rework. Next one, KBA, AR. I'm fine with that. My answer. Crystal, KBE. This policy is unnecessary, Dan says the district and its employees have legal guidelines that we must follow. So is that saying that we should?
Do you want this
Delete this?
deleted?
I mean, it comes, like I mentioned, I memorized ORS 267-432, so, I mean, that comes straight from there. So, I mean. I don't know
Wait,
how
am I
necessary it
looking
is.
This is the political campaigns. We may not use funds, facilities, or equipment to influence political campaign.
I think having it is another reminder that you're not supposed to do this, so.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that same phrase is included in the earlier policy that we looked at,
I just more wanted to make sure that that was enforced.
controversial issue.
Mhm.
no harm done to have it again.
Okay.
Without
next one.
invasion of the First Amendment, right?
Yeah, right. All right. Moving on, yes?
Yeah.
KGF, I'm fine with the superintendent recommends retaining user responsibility and adding unless for a district sponsored activity. Does anybody else have thoughts about that one?
I just. This is the right one, wait, no, is this it?
Yeah, KGF EDC, it's the
That one,
very
right?
next page. Talks about authorized use of district equipment and materials.
Okay, so. Just for sake of transparency, do we have when people need to have their renewals in for the following year somewhere?
Are we
Like-
talking,
Which one are we on?
KGF slash.
For facilities, so say somebody comes in.
so we've moved to KG.
Wait, where am I,
We're on KGF.
is that facilities?
It's authorized use
Oh,
of district.
No, I'm good, you go ahead.
Yeah.
I was moving on without you, Jen,
Oh,
it's taking
sorry.
far too long.
Trying to run through these really quick. I'm only at an hour right now. I feel like we've made great progress.
Very much.
So.
You're the issue.
if- I know, sorry.
I know. So do you have anything or you're good?
I would like to take Dan up on his offer to add language that says unless for a district sponsored activity.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Anybody else?
No, I don't think so. Okay, next one is KG.
Oh, wait,
What?
what about when we borrow out sports equipments to other sporting districts? What about like,
Unless for a district sponsored activity.
so like, what if there's a tournament and they're short, like, a mat, and we take a mat to one of the tournaments, cause schools will bring tournament mats to our tournament, is that gonna be a problem here?
Cause that does happen.
Yeah, it like all the time,
All the time.
like all the time. Like,
Every tournament.
yes, every single one, you're
Transportation
bringing
and
them-
equipment will be users' responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, this happens like all the time at the high school level, it's like sharing, everybody pools their resources.
Right, and well, my thought on this second to the last statement was transportation of borrowed equipment will be the user's responsibility. Like if we have not like a high school team, like
Somebody comes and gets it.
somebody comes and gets it. It's the transportation borrowed equipment will be the user's responsibility. And
So it's not
says-
saying they can't.
Right, it's saying this, but then it says no equipment authorized for use will be removed from district property, like you can borrow it, but it stays here. It kind of.
Yeah, that one has to go.
Well, and it said exceptions to this policy must be approved by the superintendent.
I mean, do you wanna call every time somebody's using a mat?
It's every tournament.
My turn, maybe this in turn?
Yeah, every, like, they pull up, it's constant.
I could see that. But it wouldn't be a sponsored event.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, I just.
So you're questioning whether we wanna strike out that last, what's actually in brackets there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
Not to be removed from district,
yeah, I mean, if we're following this policy,
although the
We-
superintendent can make exceptions, but
yeah, we would be saying, yeah, go ahead and borrow it, but you're not,
Right.
this way you don't
Taking
have
it
to always
from
make
our-
exceptions.
right.
I don't know, I just don't wanna
Yeah, I'm. all-
pigeonhole us. But basically, it should say that you're responsible for any transportation needed to damage,
Mhm.
that's all.
But. Right.
I really don't care, I don't care as much as when I went through these.
So I've got my notes.
Okay.
I'm not the hill I'm dying on, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that's,
I guess I just wanted to be clear that it's the user's it's the borrower's responsibility.
yeah, I think that one needs a lot of work, actually, more than I realized in the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna mark it as maybe a table then.
Well, I'll try to get it
No,
back up here
I'll get it
for
up
next,
here.
for next time.
I mean, if you send it out and we're,
And if it doesn't meet it, we'll table it.
Okay,
yeah, but. I think everything has the potential to be adopted at the next one, there's just a small little bit of clarification.
okay,
So unless one of us emails him back and says, hey, this is a red flag for me,
yeah,
we're gonna bring it forward.
okay. Moving on to KG, Crystal,
I have way too much time on my hands.
myself and Heidi. We had questions about this one. You wanna kick us off, Crystal? So this is community use of district facilities.
I mean, I've never actually seen a feature, wait, I did see one,
It's on our website.
yeah, I saw that, when, the one that you gave me. There's a lot of questions about priority level and youth sports, so that was why I was asking. Do we have some deadlines for when people need to like, say there's gonna be a tournament in 2027. And they want to. Use a specific field. We'll say the baseball field, cause nobody likes that one used. And they wanna put in a facilities use form or something, like, do we have criteria or an end date or like a process? Like, you do not have to answer any of this, but is there a written process somewhere that we can point to? Like an AR?
Like, the request is only for current or next year.
Yeah, like
Any
some
damage
sort
or
of
responsible.
AR of some sort that has clear. This is the process, this is the guidelines, this is the requirements.
I believe I've just recently read somewhere, couldn't tell you where, we will do it for up to a 3 month time period, but no longer than. That longer periods have to be pre-approved. For instance, we do the church at the primary school. That's approved for a year at a time. But other
Okay.
than that, we don't go for more than, I think it's a 3 month time period, Crystal Valley. Actually, it says it right here, not to exceed 3 months unless a longer period is approved.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that we have like a black and white. Deanna's reading my mind. A black and white, clear. Standard. System,
Well, and remember on our forms,
yeah,
school use takes priority over anything.
right,
So that means like the regular season is scheduled,
yeah,
all the gyms, and then we open it up to
mhm,
youth athletics. But we have to schedule all our practices and all our games that are in-house.
mhm,
And I
Yeah.
think the high school and middle school work together a little bit, Anita, and
yeah,
wanted to do that, and then there's a point where
other
we open
people,
it up. And so I assume their requests are waiting. And then they also adjust based on what is left.
yeah. So Dan, you know,
Yeah. Sure. We'll review the, I mean, the AR is really detailed, so
I read it, but I didn't give any like,
like, you know, is there? Is it a date that it opens and everybody has fair game, or can someone put something out for way far in the future? I get what you're,
yeah,
So.
I don't know, just keep that in the back of your mind, that's
And
my one word on it and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, okay. Not school, maybe a damage fall or something.
Yeah.
Next one, KGA. That was me. KGA, public sales on district property. I'm fine with the answer that I received. Thank you.
Okay.
KGC. I'm fine to move on that one as well. And the next one,
On which one?
KGC,
Okay. Mine, sorry,
it's okay,
I'll get caught up.
and KGF,
Yep, I'm fine with that one.
okay.
Wait, it's KG, no, not me, keep going.
I'm fine on the next one, KI. Version 1 is delete, version 2 is proposed, I like the proposed version. KJ, you, Heidi and I, had thoughts about this one. I just wanted to understand, I think Crystal, you had the same request about commercial advertising. We really rely on, our community to help support us and sponsor events and things, so I think we were just looking for some clarity. Would you say that's the same? But
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that without knowing and maybe lean on Linda, I mean, sort of surprising that there's not a policy around this.
Mhm.
But obviously it's probably working because you haven't had to deal with it. You've got great community supporters who donate a lot to advertise and whatnot. So we definitely don't want to create something that makes it harder and deters people. So,
Right.
I mean, I think I would just, before this comes up for adoption next month, is there anything in here that you think is gonna cause people issues? We can look at it as a team. Do we think this is gonna be a deterrent for people? We can look at some ARs, if that would also help people, define a procedure that's easy for people. Cause most districts I looked at had this policy and an AR.
So is this saying that if we want? Like, I'm thinking like business cards in the yearbook kind of thing, are you approving all of those? Or a designee is approving those?
Let the high school principals see if they know how to business cards get in a yearbook.
the students call.
Okay.
Well, it ads, ask for ads, yes.
So. I mean, I don't think we want to get into regulating that or me being in charge of the approval of that, but.
Is this one required?
No.
But Deanne, is it at your discretion? So that a business that probably shouldn't be advertised in there, I'm assuming you're, or, you know what I mean? It's still, there's still some oversight on it. So,
I like that, ones on the fields.
exactly, on the field, you're not gonna have certain businesses
do want-
advertising on the field, I would hope, but.
Do?
So how about,
The candy shop.
how about this? How about, cause I read Rick's notes in here and he says it's highly recommended but not required. And so, and he said that if the district has a process, it could adopt that process as the policy. So obviously you've had some kind of process, just not been articulated somewhere. So why don't we will table this one, not to bring this back for next month. We will table this one until we kind of get our processes outlined and then bring it up in the future.
Yeah, I'm not against a policy on it. I just wanna make sure we aren't tying our hands.
No, you're being very thoughtful for the fact that you've had a process that's worked for you.
Well, I don't know what it is, but it's
Right.
working.
Hey, next up is. KL,
Mhm.
you and Heidi, Crystal.
So. Is there a place where, and I don't know, this may be like a legal question. That we can say that these complaints have to be regarding our districts? or a student in our district or something along that line? They have to be like in our jurisdiction?
Well, I think that, with any. I mean, someone throws out a complaint that I think has no merit or validity. So I still think that through a process, the superintendent needs to declare that. You know, like there's, I don't have access to the witnesses that you're thinking I should talk to, or I can't find a remedy that the district would be able to solve the issue. You know, that would be, someone still needs to make that, be my job to make that determination. And then appeal to the board if they were unsatisfied with that. So I don't think that there's gonna be a language that you're gonna be able to say. Stop, you can't go past go, collect $200. I mean, there's not gonna be something that's gonna do that. Someone throws in a complaint, whether I think it's frivolous or not, I need to be able to articulate why that complaint has no standing, or I can't satisfy what they're asking for.
What if the complaint's been closed?
Well, I could probably, if it came back, I could probably say, based on the previous evidence that's been compiled, I see no new evidence supporting that. Anything different than what was previously rendered. So.
Okay, fine. I'll move on.
I know what you're saying, but.
I think it's better to go through a process and say, I've reviewed the evidence, there's no new evidence here.
I'm sure it'll be better, don't worry.
So,
LBE, yep, we're gonna delete that one. LBEA. Crystal, that one's yours.
I agree. He said that. The superintendent has the ability to manage over that case by case. So I want to just make sure that was still available.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of my thing, is like, there's a cap on it, but do we plan on denying?
we do have a couple that we are looking at now.
So then what happens, like, no, you can't really?
Yeah.
Well, at this point, calling in for a meeting,
Okay,
let's learn more about this. So,
okay. So that's your case by case?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're done. Hour and 20 minutes, faster than last time.
Whoa.
Thank you.
Don't get
Thank you.
excited. We're not done. We have another agenda item.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay.
I'm done.
Are you turning it back?
I'm back over to you. Oh my gosh.
Jenny, I will say you did a fantastic job. That's why I passed it over to you.
Do you want to do that to me again?
I can't promise that.
All right.
All right. You with us? You good? Board operating agreement. Dan?
So, yeah, just wanna go back to that,
Wait, hold on.
Question, how are we gonna be, and I can't have my agenda, but it says there's an action item.
there should be an action item for
GIJ.
your,
Oh. Are we doing that today? That we're
Yeah.
doing?
yes, so anything that, and your board,
We did do this last time, where there was nothing. We had a motion.
Okay, well then finish it off.
so yes, anything in the G through L, if there was no review, those policies got adopted.
If there was no follow-up?
Yeah.
Correct. So for instance, I'm looking like. So on this, if you've got this in front of you,
Oh, so it's all the ones that we didn't talk about.
correct,
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion for adopting and deleting the policies we just reviewed that don't have any action required.
I'll make a motion that we adopt and delete any policy in section G, I, J, K, L that has no action required.
I guess I'll second that.
Wait, there's two motions?
No, she would entertain one if I made a motion.
Yeah. Right. Hearing a action in a second, opening it up for discussion. Any thoughts? Yes, no, okay. Motion is approved. Motion
Nope.
passes.
Vote,
Oh, I'm sorry, all those in favor say aye.
Except the ones we pulled out.
Correct.
right,
Yeah,
all those in favor?
I.
aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. I know,
I'm training you for when I'm gonna be gone.
no, I'm gonna.
Maybe I'll be there. Okay, so now, thank you, Linda.
For catching that.
Thank you.
Dan's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna roll right over it. Thanks, Jenny, for taking care of CD. Okay, going back to item E, Dan?
All right, so this is the board superintendent operating agreement that was presented to you at our retreat. And I've reflected a couple of changes based on feedback. And so I'm recommending if you're, I mean, a lot of this is your roles and responsibilities, so I'm hoping you're okay with this, so. But you're recommending that this be our operating agreement, so. I've not heard any feedback from, although I don't think I asked for it, but. On the blue language or the strikeouts.
I like the blue. I think it's just a little bit smoother myself.
Is that just for visiting our school, or when it says, number 5? Number 5 is before visiting a school, is that just?
So any of our 4 schools.
Oh, North
Yeah.
Carolina schools, okay.
Yeah.
But it's,
Well, kudos goes to Merle for the suggestions. The blue language is his.
I will say like, when they're talking about on number 5, it's not like when you're gonna go to like a sporting event unless you're gonna portray yourself as like. You're doing board business, and that's my understanding.
Yeah.
You can't go and hang out at the snack shack and ask for somebody to buy you dinner.
Bro,
I would make a motion that we approve the board superintendent operating agreements as presented.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done. Excellent job, Meryl.
And Dan.
Dan,
Or-
sorry. In all fairness, I've had a very long day. I did already eat a piece of cheesecake. Okay, anything else that, just to open the floor to you, you're good? Any other questions for work session, like comment on our topics?
Is it necessary to motion to delete the ones we deleted? Or is that assumed?
I think ours did say adoption and deletion.
Adopting the others, we've left the rest. Why?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
motion was to adopt and delete.
And delete.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm,
thank you.
yeah. Anything else? Questions? Robert?
No, all good here.
Okay.
Next month, we have a board meeting on October 14th and a work session the 28th.
Correct.
Right, okay. Bud?
I don't have anything else other than, is there stuff going on for homecoming this week?
Yes. Today was group volleyball.
Fall decorations was Saturday. Assembly on Friday, you guys are welcome to come, I'll send out an invite for our court assembly. And then halftime at the football game. and the dance on Saturday, more than welcome to come back.
Come on now. Also, there's dress up days every day.
Every day.
I'll be the hype person.
And when you're done with the high school, you can buzz right over to the middle school
It's
for
called
their.
a double header. 106 to 136 is the high school one, and 145 to 245 is the middle school one. You get 2 for 1.
Save gas.
Assembly.
driving.
No, it's not dance. It's
What's-
assembly.
Just what I thought.
Dance is next week on the 11th.
Oh,
We don't
okay.
have a dance.
What is it?
10th.
All right.
But yeah, mark your calendars. I think assembly.
Please come to the dance.
I'll show up.
You go to dance? Oh, man.
Oh, wait, Charles
That's
needs
the
surgery,
people
sorry.
go to dance.
Jenny, you good?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
No, you good? You good?
Any last thoughts?
Well,
Topic stuff,
I
you're
don't
good?
guess so, unless you wanna hear a poem or something.
No, we're good, Merle. We're good. All right, I will adjourn at 20:29. Or 8:29, sorry. I'm on hospital time today.